Chandran Nair is no stranger to controversy. His book, Consumptionomics, Asia's Role in Reshaping Capitalism, is making waves among economists and politicians alike. He believes that the consumption-led economic model of the last 50 to 60 years is unsustainable and will lead to catastrophic failure, especially in the Asia-Pacific region.
Imagine 6 billion people in Asia in 2050. Can anyone envisage a future in which 6 billion Asians are living like Americans? This is simply not possible. Everything will be stretched to its limits. So what's troubling is, I think, the economic model, in my argument that it is flawed, is that it seeks to promote relentless consumption, that more is better. I cheekily say, buy one, get one free. How does that work? Economics. And because it seeks to promote relentless consumption, it seeks also, therefore, to underprice resources. And by doing that, ultimately, I argue it seeks to usurp the institutions of the state, which are there to protect public good.
You talk about the world being in a state of denial. How do you convince them that your way is the best way forward?
Asia is in denial because it's at the same time intellectually subservient to a Western narrative about where the world needs to go, how the world should develop, what prosperity looks like, what economic growth looks like. And that intellectual subservience is deep-rooted through the history of colonialism, etc., and it still persists, despite the triumphalism of some Asian business leaders and politicians.
But Asians look at the West and they say, wow,
exactly.
that's a good life.
Of course.
Nice cars, big houses,
absolutely.
air-conditioned 24/7.
Absolutely.
Why shouldn't Asians have that?
Because they can't. And so we need to look at all the evidence, and all the science is very clear, except the economists who tend to be in denial, who provide the advice to most of our politicians, who are then intellectually subservient to this narrative. The science is very clear, we can't go on this way. Climate change is just one aspect of that whole trajectory of consumption, resource depletion, extractive growth. And no one is saying you can't have a car, you can't have a bicycle, etc. The book argues that essentially we will need to decide what is the price of these conveniences, these goods and services, etc. But more importantly, I would argue that we have created an appetite because of the consumption-led model that suggests that human beings all desire cars. I don't believe this is true. I don't think we are coded in our DNAs to say when I can, I want a car. What human beings do need is clearly the things that they need to consume, which the majority don't consume and which will get worse. Food, safe and secure. Water and sanitation. Today, more people in Asia have access to mobile phones and handheld devices than water. So it's easy for us, those of us who've been lucky, live in places like Hong Kong or Singapore, and think this is the world. Well, this is Disneyland.
This is a controversial view of the way Asia needs to look at its future. How is it being accepted in Asia?
One of the reasons I wrote the book was as I spoke more and more over the last 10 years, I found that privately, from captains of industry to policymakers, everyone would say to me, you know, you're right. But very few would dare say it publicly. So that's ideology. So I thought I would be someone from this part of the world, and so far I've been the only one who's blatantly said there is a problem. We have to deal with it politically. It's not a do good, go green, philanthropic, all of that sort of hubris. It's much deeper. And to answer your question, it's been very well received.
Is there a nexus between government intervention and technology to address the issues that you talk about in your book?
My argument is, and I use the word provocatively, that the state, and I can use it in Singapore without being accused of being a fascist, that the role of the state is critical. We've seen on Wall Street, which is the most extreme, that the private sector cannot solve the problems of providing public good. And when it then seeks to externalize costs and use resources through an underpricing economic model, over the long term it disenfranchises the majority. And in this part of the world, the majority are disenfranchised. To pretend that they can enjoy the fruits of a Californian lifestyle is a lie. And so we need to look at this differently, and I'm suggesting that firstly we need to reject that Western narrative. It's not an anti-Western rant, it's just that it's become the dominant ideology. We need to find something different which focuses on this particular challenge, and therefore reject the notion that the state is not important.
Nair says that people can adjust, and the time to start doing that is now. He believes three things must happen. First, resource management must be at the center of all government policy making. Second, the collective welfare of society must take priority over individual rights. And finally, resources like water, petrol, and other commodities must be repriced. For NUS Business School, I'm Glenn Van Zutphen.